I'm Rasanjali Samarakon and I will lead you through this session. This session has 6 presentations. This presentation will be evaluated by a panel of judges. I would like to request all judges to kindly switch on the cameras. It is my privilege and pleasure to introduce the members of the judging panel. Dr. N. Jayasena, Senior Lecturer, Department of Basic Science, Faculty of Veterinary Sciences and Animal Production, University of Peradeniya. Dr. Ruvini Viyanage from National Institute of Fundamental Studies. Dr. S. Somasiri, Senior Lecturer, Department of Animal and Food Science, Faculty of Agriculture, Rajarata University of Sri Lanka. I would like to welcome you all, our honorable judges, to the session today. Let me brief about the session for all the presenters and judges. So each speaker will present the poster for 2 minutes. They have shared the videos with us. So I will be playing your 2 minutes video first, and then it will be followed by a 3 minutes question and answer session. So all the presenters, when at your time slot, you need to switch on your camera and your microphone, and you have to answer the questions from the judges. So our 3 judges can ask the questions from each presenter. So there will be 3 minutes for each presenter for the question and answer session. Okay, so our first presenter is actually, I would like to make this note to our judges. She is having a small difficulty with connection. So I would like to request all the judges to skip that one for the time being until we join this presenter. We will move on to the second presenter first. I will play the video first. Meanwhile, please check your settings, Chaturi. So her presentation is dietary micronutrient adequacy in early adolescence in the city of Colombo, Sri Lanka. The presenter is A.D.D.C. Athaud. I will first play the video of her presentation.
Dietary micronutrient adequacy in early adolescence in the city of Colombo. Introduction. Hidden hunger is chronic deficiency of micronutrients. The nutrient requirement of early adolescence is high due to accelerated growth rate. The city of Colombo, the capital of the country, is in rapid nutrition transition in which vegetable-based diet was replaced by the diet rich in energy, sugar and salt. Therefore, this study was conducted to determine the adequacy of micronutrient intake among 11 to 13 years in the city of Colombo. Methodology. A cross-sectional study was conducted using 634 11 to 13-year adolescents who were studying in 12 government schools in the city of Colombo. Sampling technique was multi-stage stratified cluster sampling technique. A 3-day diet diary was used to gather all foods and beverages consumed during 3 consecutive days. These diaries were analyzed for daily micronutrient intake using Foodbase 2000 software. According to this study, adolescents were inadequate in calcium, zinc, magnesium, iodine, vitamin A, thiamine, riboflavin, vitamin B12, folate, and vitamin C. The most inadequate mineral and vitamin by the adolescents were iron and folate respectively. Therefore, early adolescents aged 11 to 13 years in the city of Colombo are in hidden hunger. Thank you.
That is the end of A.D.D.C. Athaud's poster. Now the session is open for 3 minutes question and answer session. So now first I would like to invite Dr. Jayasena for any questions.
Can you please share the screen with the poster as well?
Okay, madam.
Is Ms. Athaud able to hear me?
Yes, madam.
Okay. Okay, so that is an important study that you have conducted. So I would first like to know, now you have concentrated on the micronutrients. Did you also look at the, because you start your abstract actually by saying overnutrition, right? So did you also look at the written abstract? It starts by prevalence of overnutrition.
Yes,
You also
madam.
look at something like the BMI of these of your study
Yes,
sample.
Yes,
So what
madam.
was that? Were they were they overnourished or undernourished, or what were the overall nutrient like BMI status?
Yeah, majority of the subjects were normal weight. 17.7% were overweight. 10.8% were 10.8% were obese, and 40.9% were centrally obese. The mean BMI was 18.25.
So no one was
18.
underweight.
The prevalence of underweight was 15.8%.
Okay. So did you also look at this micronutrient by those categories? For example, I mean, did you factor in whether they were their level of whether they were overweight, underweight, obese, so on? But when you looked at these levels of the micronutrients?
No, madam, I didn't.
I think that could also be something that you can look at, because there may be, you know, even overweight children may be having micronutrient deficiencies. So that I think you might add that to your analysis.
Okay, madam.
Okay, so
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Jayasena. Dr. Liyanage, would you like to ask a question?
Yeah. Ms. Atauda, how did you, analyze the micronutrient content? Did you analyze the micronutrient content in food they consume?
Yes, using the food-based 2000 software, I analyzed those foods for micronutrient intake.
Did you analyze analytically, or did you just use
software?
Software, all right, okay.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Liyanage. Dr. Somasiri, would you like to ask a question?
One small question. What is the male to female ratio?
336 boys and 270 girls.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Somasiri. Thank you, Ms. Atauda,
Thank you, madam.
for your participation. Thank you. You can unmute. You can mute your microphone and switch off your practices regarding iron deficiency anemia among pregnant women in Kattanpudi DS division of the Batticaloa district. The presenter is M.R. Roshana. M.R. Roshana. Miss Roshana, can you hear me? Miss Roshana? I will play the video first. I hope Miss Roshana can hear me. I will share the video first.
Hi everyone, I'm Roshana. I have the great opportunity to discuss my research finding on the topic of assessment of knowledge and practices regarding iron deficiency anemia among the pregnant women in Kattanpudi DS division of the Batticaloa district. Anemia remains the most significant public health concern in the world as well as in Sri Lanka. One of the most susceptible population is the pregnant woman. Since there is a lack of information regarding the anemia among the pregnancy women in this study area. Therefore, the research was carried out to examine the socio-demographic and the baseline data and knowledge and practices related to anemia. A semi-structured interview was conducted to collect the data and the consecutive sampling method was adopted. According to their finding, the majority of the pregnant women between the ages of 25 to 30 and advanced level as the educational qualification and the nuclear family as the family type. The family income range between 10,000 to 30,000 rupees per month and taking non-vegetarian diet. Based on the baseline data, more than 50% of the women were multigravid and majority of them had the pregnancy interval more than 3 years. In the study area, only 19.9% of the women were anemic. And there was a significant relationship between the educational level of the pregnant woman and their knowledge regarding the causes of anemia. And also, most of them follow in the good practices for the prevention of anemia. Therefore, the continuous education and the awareness program is necessary among the pregnant women to avoid the risk factors of the anemia and reduce the negative effect during the pregnancy in this study area. Thank you very much.
Okay, now the session is open for the question and answer session. Ms. Roshana, can you hear me?
Yes, madam.
Okay, okay. Dr. Lianage, would you like to start?
Okay, this is an important study. So now in the conclusion, you have mentioned that only 90% of the women were anemic.
Yes, madam.
Yeah, then that means the around 8% of the population is not anemic.
Yes, madam. According to our study, only 99% was anemic.
And I mean, what is the main reason? Don't they consume animal-based diets?
Yeah, most of them are consuming the non-vegetarian. Most of them are eating the beef, meat product.
Most of them?
Yeah, eating the non-vegetarian.
Right.
Only small percentage of them are vegetarian diet.
So those vegetarians, now from your study, you can conclude that all the vegetarians, I mean, are the vegetarians, veganism is the reason for this anemic condition?
No, madam, there are several factors are involving, then educational level, monthly income. Diet is not only the major factor. There are several factors are involving.
Okay.
Might be the age and the monthly income, as well as the family type. Those or several factors are involving to determine the anemic, not only the diet.
Right, okay.
Thank you, Dr. Lianage. Dr. Somasiri, would you like to ask a question from Ms. Roshana?
Yeah, thank you. What does it mean by a nuclear family?
Sorry, ma'am.
Nuclear family, you said.
Yeah, madam. Then only not a joint family. The father, mother, and their children.
All right. And forgive me for asking this question. All the women, are they Muslims or in different nationalities?
No, madam. In Katang DS division is the mostly 100% Muslim. So all are Muslims.
Okay. Still, you have non-vegetarian Muslim.
Then, yeah.
19%.
While I'm conducting the research, that non-vegetarian and then 15.9%.
Yeah, I mean, some Muslims were also vegetarian.
Yeah, madam.
Okay. And what was the age group of this remaining 20%? That means 19.9%. Is it also between 25 to 30 years?
No, madam. Some of them are out of that range.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Okay, madam.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Dr. Somasiri. Now, Dr. Jayasena, we can have a very short question.
Okay. So actually, one comment is actually 20% is quite considerable amount of anemia, I would say. Ms. Roshana, so that's very important finding. What were the most important factors? Because you have looked at many factors. What were the most important factors that seem to affect these women who were anemic, or what were the factors that you studied that seem to affect their anemia?
Sorry, ma'am, I couldn't get your question.
So what now you have looked at several factors like occupation
Yeah,
and education level and so on,
yeah.
monthly income, but when you analyzed your data statistically, what was the one which had the largest impact on them being anemic? Were you able to figure out which one or more factors were more important on this status of anemia?
Because every point is there is a significant relationship for the HB level and the factors.
But did you look at the strength of the relationship, or didn't you do that?
No, madam.
Okay, so I think you
Yeah.
might want to look at that. And when you
Yeah.
present the data also, now you have looked at the age-wise distribution, income,
Yeah.
and so on.
Yeah.
It would be more useful if you showed it by the category, those who are anemic and those who are non-anemic. So then, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, ma'am.
Yes, thank you.
Can I
Okay,
have one
thank
more
you, ma'am.
question? Can I have one more question? How did you compare your data with the national values?
Sorry, ma'am.
How can you compare your data? Did you compare the data with the national average for this anemic condition? How can you compare? Is it higher than, is it more than 20%?
In Sri Lanka, the prevalence of the anemic is 35.4%.
35%.
Oh,
Okay, then this is less than that.
yeah, madam.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Jayasena and Dr. Piyanage. Thank you, Ms. Roshana.
Thank you,
You
madam.
can mute and
Okay.
switch off your camera. Judges, please let me know when the evaluation is done for Ms. Roshana so we can move on to the third presenter. Our next presenter is Ms. IP Lokugamage. Her presentation title is Willingness to Pay for Sustainable Seafood Products Across Regions, a Meta-Analysis. Presenter is IP Lokugamage. Ms. Lokugamage?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you hear me? Okay. I will share the poster first, the video.
Hello everyone, I'm Yumi Lokugamage. I'm going to explain you about this study. In marine capture fisheries sector, studies show that the current fish exploitation patterns are not sustainable. If continued, the total collapse will be experienced by 2048. In marine aquaculture sector, it has also resulted serious negative environmental impacts. On this background, the concept of sustainable seafood is important. It is produced with less negative environmental and social impacts. To achieve these sustainable seafood markets, it is important to identify the preferences of consumers. So this study will answer the questions whether consumer willingness to pay varies based on different attributes of sustainable seafood, based on different regions and estimation methods used. So to answer this, we performed a meta-analysis. So this is done by completely using literature. So we gathered 23 studies with 55 estimates and analyzed the data by using regression model in R Commander, and the results show that the consumer willingness to pay for organic seafood is more significantly higher compared to the locally produced seafood. And considering the estimation method used, it shows that conjoint analysis results in higher willingness to pay estimates compared to other methods. Finally, the studies show that both Americans and Europeans are significantly more willing to pay for sustainable seafood compared to Asians. So this shows that both Americans and Europeans are more concerned about this concept. So it implies that the willingness to pay for sustainable seafood products varies across regions. Thank you.
Okay, now the presentation is open for the discussion. First, I would like to ask Dr. Somasiri to ask the questions from Mr. Kudamathu.
Okay, thank you. Are you talking about seafood or seafood products?
Seafood, both, madam. Fresh seafood and some included products like fillets and likewise.
Products means processed ones.
Yes, processed one, and both fresh fish as too, like both processed products and fresh products as well.
Okay, your methodology should be improved because it's not clear. And also you talk about the region. What were the regions? I can only see it in the conclusion that these were the regions, and it should be in the methodology.
Yes, ma'am. Regions were we categorized all these regions based on the studies. So it was America, Europe, and Asia. So we created dummy variables by considering Asia as the baseline, and America and Europe were used as the two dummy variables.
Okay, and you also talk about 3 types: environmentally friendly, organic, and locally produced. What does it mean by locally produced seafood?
So yes, it is produced in their own region, in the local region. So this helps to improve the local communities. It helps. It concerns about the social sustainability aspect, and then again, this local production ensures the use of a low carbon footprint. That means for transportation and processing rather than being imported. This locally produced ensures both social sustainability and environmental sustainability.
And organic seafood, what does it mean?
Organic in the sense, this is mostly this is involved with aquaculture. So according to the EU regulation, they have defined organic production as it is produced with more environmentally friendly practices and high animal welfare standards and preserving natural resources. Likewise, it is involved with aquaculture sector.
Are you sure there are no inorganic substances involved?
Yes, they have these were based on literature studies. So the studies have asked the consumers their preference for organic seafood over inorganic seafood.
All right. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Somasiri. Dr. Jayasena, would you like to ask a question?
I have a small question, Mr. Kugamage. So that's a very interesting study. Can you just explain what your inclusion and more importantly your exclusion criteria for your meta-analysis were?
Yes, ma'am. First, we use some keywords like sustainable seafood, sustainable fish, willingness to pay. Likewise, we searched studies based on these keywords, and then we read all the studies by the title, and we read the abstract. And based on the title and abstract, first we removed some articles, and then we read the remaining articles, and all the content was read of the all remaining articles, and at the end 23 studies were selected, and some studies considered about more than one product and was done in more than one country, or considered more than one attribute. So at the end we gathered 55 estimates from 23 studies.
Okay, thank you. So you didn't exclude any based on, methodological criteria, how they selected their samples or size of the sample size, those things you didn't consider in your exclusion criteria.
No, madam, we considered all the methods, that's why we, and the third question of the study was to find out whether the consumer willingness to pay varies based on
Yeah.
the estimation method.
Yeah. Okay, but remember that the reliability of your meta-analysis is going to depend on how you select your studies. If the original study, their methodology had some problems, your conclusions may get biased due to that. So you can carefully look at the methodology of the studies included in your study. Did you understand?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Jayasena. Dr. Liyanage.
Yeah, I have just one small question. Ms. Lokho Gamake, what do you really mean by this sustainable seafood products?
Sustainable seafood is seafood farmed or caught considering the long-term vitality of species and the well-being of seas and the livelihoods of the communities involved in fisheries. So simply that sustainable seafood is seafood farmed or caught with less negative environmental and social impact.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Liyanage, and thank you, Ms. Lokugamage.
Thank you.
You can mute your mic and switch off the camera. Thank you. Once the judges are done with the evaluation, we will move to the next presenter. The next presenter is MGT Lakmali. Presentation is effect of marketing mix antecedents on consumer brand preference of milk powder. The presenter is MGT Lakmali. Ms. Lakmali, can you hear me?
Yes, madam.
Okay, I will play the video first.
Welcome you all. I am MGT Lakmali and I am presenting a study on effect of marketing mix antecedents on consumer brand preference of milk powder. Sri Lanka annually spends around 55 billion rupees for the importation of milk powder. However, the actual consumer preferences for milk powder is quite questionable because it has been reported that imported milk powder has several quality issues. Therefore, the main objective was to identify the effect of marketing mix antecedents on consumer brand preference of milk powder. For that purpose, price perception, exposure to advertisement, perceived quality of brand, brand personality, and country of origin were selected as the marketing mix antecedents. 100 Sri Lankan milk powder consumers were selected as the sample, and the data were collected using Google form-based structured questionnaire. Collected data were analyzed using Smart PLS software. The results reveal that majority of the consumers show higher preference for domestically produced milk powder brands, while 35% of the consumers clearly stated that they hate imported milk powder brands. Furthermore, the results concluded that country of origin and brand personality have a significant influence on consumer brand preference of milk powder. On the other hand, exposure to advertisement, price perception, and perceived quality of brand have no significant influence on consumer brand preference of milk powder. Brand preference positively and significantly influences consumer brand loyalty of milk powder. And ultimately, Sri Lankan consumers show strong patriotism towards domestically produced milk powder brands over imported milk powder brands. Thank you for your kind attention.
The presentation is now open for questions. Dr. Jayasena, would you like to start?
Okay, thank you. Yes, Lakmali, so you said you have done this as an online survey.
Yes, madam.
Right? So, and you have used convenience sampling. Did you look at, the diversity of your sample do you think there was any type of sampling bias among your sample?
Madam, majority of the sample we considered belong to the age category of 21 to 30.
Okay. So then, I mean, you can't generalize your findings unless you have a representative sample, right? So what other ways do you think you could overcome this type of sampling bias?
We can collect the sample from other age categories as well. I mean, 31 to 40, above that age
Do
category.
you think is it only age that has a bias when you do a sample like this? When you take your sample in the way that you have done, you think there could be other types of sampling bias?
Because we have considered the convenient sampling, but to get a more generalizable sample, we can practice the random sampling technique also. Likewise, we can improve the generalizability of this study. Generalizability of this study.
You might need to think about that, because if you're doing a Google-based questionnaire, only those who have online access are going to, use it.
Yes,
and it depends on the way you send your questionnaire also. Also, now you said that you have shown some clear preferences. What are the factors that you try to find that influence these preferences? You look at any factors, any explanatory variables that influence this preference for local and foreign brands?
Preference mainly the country of origin effect.
No, that is what you're looking at. But what were the factors among your samples? So was it education, or was it gender, or was it what were the factors that affected this preference? Did you try to find it in your questionnaire, any type of factors that may, or did you think about what could influence?
No, madam, we other than these factors, we haven't analyzed those things, the factors, gender, age, and education likewise.
So you didn't ask any of those?
Sorry, madam.
Did you ask any of those in your questionnaire?
Yes.
Did you ask any of those things in your questionnaire?
No, madam.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, Dr. Jayasena. Dr. Yanage.
Yeah, Lakmali, in your abstract, you say that, however, recent information related to contamination of imported milk powder with the hazardous element has made a considerable impact. Do you have, did you find any evidences for this statement in this abstract?
Madam, by analyzing the previous literature that have published recently in year 2020 and 2021, there are some proofs regarding this statement.
Are there published papers?
Yeah, published.
What sort of hazardous elements they have found?
Mainly dicyanamide, madam.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, madam.
Dr. Somasiri.
Yeah, thank you. What does it mean by brand loyalty?
Brand loyalty means, madam, the once a consumer purchase a brand, they tend to purchase it again and again, and being loyal to that brand other than other similar competitive brands in the market.
Okay. You also included Sri Lankan brand.
Yes, madam. Yes.
Thank you. No more question.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Somasiri. Thank you.
Just one more question, please, Rasanjali.
Yes, madam.
Yeah. Lakmali, so you talked about this contamination as Dr. Yanage also asked. Now, do you know whether the local brands have also been tested for any type of contamination or not?
No, madam.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, madam. Thank you, Ms. Lakmali.
Thank you, madam.
Okay. The next presenter is Ms. H.R. Ramya. The presentation is a comparative analysis of stakeholder linkages in integrated farming systems for technology reach in selected agroclimatic zones of Karnataka. Presenter is H.R. Ramya. Ms. Ramya, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Okay. I will play the video first.
Yes, ma'am. Please.
All, I am Ramya, working as scientist at IIHR Bangalore. Today, I am presenting my research work on comparative analysis of stakeholder linkages in integrated farming system for technology reach in select agroclimatic zones of Karnataka. Integrated farming system comprises of different combination of agriculture enterprises, which include series of linkages with different stakeholders to provide food and nutritional security as well as economic security to the farming community. With this importance, we have analyzed the linkage among the stakeholders using linkage index and actor linkage matrix with a total sample size of 350 from 5 different agroclimatic zones of Karnataka. Coming to the results, under socio-economic factors, younger farmers are found to have higher linkage compared to older farmers due to their higher interest in adopting new technologies and higher liaison with other stakeholders, whereas other variables has direct proportional relationship with linkage index, like higher the land holding and animal holding, higher is the linkage index. Next, in case of table 2 results, the reciprocal linkage among the farmer and Krishi Vignan Kendra and farmer cooperatives was found to be stronger, whereas the linkage between the animal husbandry department and state department and self-help groups was found to be medium. And in case of linkage of private input agencies was found to be weak with the government sector institutes, whereas it was strong with the other progressive farmers. Like these, different actions and roles of the stakeholders were also studied and discussed in the research. Finally, under overall linkage, Udupi district had higher linkage due to strong cultural and group solidarity, whereas Tumkur district farmers had low linkage index due to the drought-prone condition prevailing in the district. They had low interest in having the linkage with the other stakeholders. And also, finally, I would like to conclude by saying that identified gaps in technology reach and adoption need to be addressed through creating common platform for stronger research, extension, market, and farmer linkage to disseminate the integrated farming technology effectively among the farmers. Thank you.
The presentation is now open for questions. Dr. Lianage, would you like to start?
I'm sorry, I don't have, actually not very clearly audible. So I don't have any questions.
Dr. Somasiri?
Yeah, I can. What do you mean by stakeholders?
Ma'am, am I audible?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Stakeholder is any an individual or any group who can influence or influenced by an innovation or intervention or the change that brought in the social system. Or in general, we can, this is with respect to our study, and in general, we can state that a stakeholder has a part or is a receiver of any benefits from out of any program or any intervention in the society.
Can you name several stakeholders in your study?
Yes, ma'am. My stakeholders identified 10 different stakeholders with respect to the integrated farming systems. In that, we had progressive farmers as one of the stakeholder, and State Department of Agriculture and State Department of Animal Husbandry, as well as state agriculture universities, veterinary universities, commodity boards, and farmer cooperatives, farmer producer organization, milk cooperatives, as well as private companies.
Okay. And you talk about roles and actions.
Yes, ma'am.
What is the difference? I couldn't understand that. You talk about roles and actions.
Ma'am, it's not any difference. I just gave the bifurcation, like they help in giving trainings, human resource development with respect to actions in dissemination of information and mediating for the technology reach with respect to in between the stakeholders. Roles, they are in general awareness creation and giving the education with respect to agriculture technologies and financial support, and also they play major role in higher stakeholders play major role in policy formulation and implementations.
Okay. One small question. What do you think is the barrier for enhancing technology adaptation?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, there is a intervention of middlemen in between the linkages, supply chains, or linkages between the government program as to reach to the farmers, as well as to certain extent there is a illiteracy of between the farmers with respect to online programs, are unaware of the government schemes among the farmers also is the major reason for being the technology gap existence.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Somasiri. Dr. Jayasena, would you like to ask a question?
Yes, I have a question, Ramya. So I think very applicable research, the findings of your study is very applicable for improving these linkages. One thing is,
yes,
I'm wondering why you looked at this by agroclimatic zones, because the stakeholder linkages I would have thought would not depend on the agroclimatic zone, but the, I don't know, some other kind of intervention.
No. Actually, from each agroclimatic zones, we have selected one each district map. Suppose we have chosen 5 districts from 5 different agroclimatic zones. We have taken a detailed study of economic analysis also. This is one of the objective under that economic study. So this results I am presenting separately. So agroclimatic zones I cannot exclude, like from hilly zone, coastal zone, from central dry zone, southern dry zone, northern transition zone. We have selected the one district.
Yeah. So do you think that what is the most important factor for now? You have found differences in this overall linkage intake index between zones, but do you think is it because of the actual agroclimatic zone, or do you think it is some other factors, you know, the infrastructure for this kind of activity? Does it depend on the agroclimatic zone or some other type of factor?
Yes, ma'am. One of the example I can tell you, like I said, in Udupi district, it belongs to coastal zone. Okay, here the farmers are more having good rainfall receiving range, and also they have a great cultural solidarity among the society members. So every day among 365 days, they are meeting for the cultural meet in the evening around 200 days in a year. So in that time, they will discuss all the technologies, new schemes regarding the agriculture, and they will be proactive to apply for the schemes or take the benefits from the government. Whereas in case of Tumkur district, it is a it belongs to central dry zone, and it is a drought hit district of Karnataka, where they show the least interest to adapt the link with the other stakeholders. When there is no water, what is the fun in having the stakeholder linkage? They were saying to
so
me.
you're saying that the actual agroclimatic zone has an impact on these linkages.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay, you might want to factor in those as well.
Yeah,
Okay,
yes.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ramya. Interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jayasena. If the judges have any more questions, we can ask. Otherwise, we can move to the next presentation. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Ramya.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Okay. Once the judges are done with the evaluation, we can move to the next presentation. Our next presentation is the last presentation of the session. The presenter is KGA Omalka. Her presentation is a study on food safety assurance in the Sri Lankan hospitality sector, and relevance of legislations to promote food safety. The presenter is KGA Omalka. Ms. Omalka, can you hear me?
Yes, madam, I can hear you.
Okay, I will share the presentation.
Hello everyone, I'm Anjali Omalka. During my session, I'm going to present you on a study on food safety assurance in the Sri Lankan hospitality sector and relevance of legislation to assure food safety. As we all know, Sri Lankan hospitality sector is one of the major anchors supporting the nation's economy. So, assurance of food safety is one of the highly demanded by the clients in the hospitality industry, but there are some inadequacies to assure food safety. So, the aim of my research was to study the food safety assurance in the country and also to identify the relevance of legislation. My research, the study was carried out in 4 sessions. The first session, the hierarchy of tourism industry was identified. In the second session, the star hotel classification, 3, 4, 5 star hotels were classified, district-wise classification, registered under Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority. And in the third phase, acts, rules and legislations related to food safety was identified. And in the last phase, the awareness on food safety among hotel staff was identified. So the results of the study showed that the main organizations in the hospitality sector are having mandates to promote hospitality sector and the tourism industry, but there are some inadequacies to assure food safety. And also it was identified that there are inadequacies to assure food safety in the food and beverage sector in the hospitality sector, and awareness among the staff of the star hotels on legislations and the requirements for food safety are weak, as it was identified, and also this becomes a hindrance to assure food safety in the country. Thank you.
The presentation is now open for questions. Dr. Somasiri, would you like to start?
All right, thank you. What does it mean by SLTDA?
Madam, that is Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority.
Yeah, you should have mentioned that. And these legislations, are they only related to this food safety changes depending on this hierarchy of the industry? Don't
Yes,
they apply for these small food outlets?
Madam, specially I targeted on 3, 4, 5 star hotels registered on the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority.
Okay. What do you mean by classification of food business operators?
That is, madam, this Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority, they check the given criteria, rules, and then they give the classification to the hotels depending on their requirements, the given mandatory requirements. So depending on that only, this classification was given.
Okay, now according to you that the safety regulations are not that applied in even these hotels, right? They are not aware of these legislative updates.
Yes, madam, they are not much aware on these rules, regulations about food safety assurance.
So what is your recommendation? What is your suggestion to improve this?
Suggestions, madam, to like inform, to inform them about these things. We can have some programs, and also they can attend to some trainings. I think these are the important things to develop the safety knowledge among the staff the staff members of the hotels.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, Dr. Somasiri. Dr. Jayasena, would you like to ask questions?
Okay, thank you, Ms. Omalka. Tell me now, you have said that there were inadequacies in the this food and beverage sector to meet these food safety requirements. Can you give me some examples of what are the inadequacies, main inadequacies you found in your study? And were there differences between your different districts and these different levels of star categories in these inadequacies?
Yes, madam, especially in Colombo, Colombo district, when we consider about this awareness and all, some of the chefs, executive chefs, they had some knowledge on the food safety assurance, but not about these rules and the regulations and the acts. But when we
Sorry, may I interrupt you? So did you just look at the awareness, or did you also look at what are the specific inadequacies, you know, based on what you saw and what are the legislations? Can you describe the specific inadequacies there are in these places?
Yes, madam. Especially, we targeted to see the awareness level and also the knowledge on acts, rules, and the regulations.
Okay, so you looked at the awareness only.
Yes, madam.
Okay, so what were the specific things that they were not aware of? For example, storage, or what kind of things were they not aware of?
Yes, madam. They were not aware on these microbiological contamination, especially contamination. And also they didn't know about these food premise regulations, the food hygiene regulations. They were not aware in the executive chefs and the managers, the food and beverage managers. They didn't know about these exact things, madam.
Okay. Thank you very much. Did you intervene to, you know, rectify these inadequacies, or was it just observational?
Observations, madam.
Okay, thank
and
you.
And also I've given some questionnaires to them. So from that also I collected the details. Madam.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, Dr. Jayasena. Dr. Liyanage.
Yeah, this is an important and timely study. So how can you compare the legislations available in the country with the developed world, where we are?
Yes, madam. I'm planning to evaluate, compare our Sri Lankan this food safety assurance with USA, Canada, Australia, Maldives, and then India. So I think after comparing those things, we'll be able to get more clear idea about where we are now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, Dr. Liyanage. Thank you, Ms. Omalka.
Thank you, madam.
So that was the last presentation of the technical poster session, Stakeholder Behavior on Food Quality and Safety. I would like to thank the panel of judges, Dr. N. Jayasena, Dr. R. Liyanage, and Dr. S. Somasiri for their valuable contribution, and also the presenters for their presentations and answering all the questions from the judges, and also making this session a great success. Thank you, everyone. We wish to invite you all for the technical sessions of 33rd Annual Congress of PGIA tomorrow. Technical sessions will commence from 11 a.m. The links are available in the PGIA Congress website. You can see the website and log into the technical sessions that you are interested in. And the posters will be displayed again at 2:10 p.m. Tomorrow. So during the main event of the Congress. So thank you, everyone. I would like to kindly request the panel of judges to remain with us, and all the presenters can leave the Zoom session. Thank you.